Hi, everyone. Dr. Adriana Popescu here. I'm going live today in honor of Alcohol Awareness Month. As many of you know, I am a licensed clinical psychologist and I specialize in treating addiction and trauma. And I've been working in the addiction treatment field for going on 25 or more years now. And I am the clinical director at a drug and alcohol rehab here in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, called Avery Lane for Women. It is a women's dual diagnosis program, meaning that we treat addiction and co-occurring mental health disorders like depression, anxiety, different issues, particularly trauma and PTSD. So I wanted to speak today on a kind of simple topic, but something that I think is really relevant to a lot of people, which is how does the addiction to alcohol, what we call alcoholism, sneak up on you? And again, doing this in honor of Alcohol Awareness Month. April is that, and wanted to just speak on this topic. So feel free, if you're on live or even if you're watching this after the fact, feel free to put any comments. Please do share about your own experiences with this topic. I'd love to get a conversation going with some interaction with you guys, whether here live or after the fact. But I think this is really a relevant topic, particularly post-pandemic. What we saw in the addiction, what we have seen in the addiction treatment field is that during the pandemic, when people got kind of isolated, especially during lockdown times, when we couldn't travel, when we couldn't be socializing, when we couldn't go out and do things, a lot of people turned to drugs and particularly alcohol because it is so available and so kind of rampant in our society. A lot of people turned to drinking as a way to cope. And that's often how addiction starts. My good friend and colleague, TJ Woodward, wrote this wonderful book called Conscious Recovery. And in that, he talks about how addiction can be like a brilliant strategy, right? It serves a function for you, right? People would not use drugs or alcohol if they didn't do something. So we know physiologically, what does it do? It has a calming effect, right? A lot of people, happy hour at the end of the day, right? I've had a stressful day. I want to have a drink or two to just unwind, to relax. It helps me to calm. Same thing with like cigarettes, right? People have that cigarette oftentimes, or vaping now, when they're feeling stressed, when they're feeling anxious, when they feel overwhelmed. And it's a way to take a time out and take some time for yourself. I see this a lot in particular with women who are out there trying to be superwoman, trying to work and maybe be a mom, raising a family, being a partner. And, they're constantly doing for everyone else, and often not including themselves, not really taking as good of care for themselves, or feeling like, well, I don't have time to exercise. I don't have time to meditate. I don't have time to do these things that I know would be good for me because I'm so busy taking care of everyone else. And so what I often see sneaking up on people is that little drink or two, my glass of wine at dinner, or, that starts to become like my little private time, my time for me, just me and my glass of wine and a book, or watching Netflix or whatever it may be. That's my time for me. And it starts to become precious to you. And then the nature of these chemicals and how they affect your brain and your body is that over time, you might need to drink more alcohol to get the desired relaxation effect. You start to build up a tolerance to it. Your body, starts being impacted by how much you're consuming. And as you're drinking more and more, you might start to notice that there's an aftermath to it. You might feel hungover the next day. That's your body's detoxing from the alcohol. You will have withdrawal symptoms. People often talk about hangxiety, hangover, anxiety. Many, many people experience mood shifts when they come off of alcohol. Like the next day, they might feel more anxious, or they might feel more depressed, or they might feel I mean, a lot of people will, feel a lot of shame, like, oh, I feel bad that I drank last night. I shouldn't have done that. Or maybe I did something while I was drinking I wish I hadn't done, like text someone or, hook up with someone or whatever it may be. I engage in some behavior I'm not proud of, because we know alcohol is a disinhibitor, right? It's also known as a social lubricant. The whole idea is it moves you out of a state of judgment and into a state of more, well, that's fine. Everything, just go with the flow. Things are fine. And for the person who's really anxious, the person who might even have like some perfectionist kind of tendencies, having alcohol in your life can be a brilliant strategy, right? Like if you have social anxiety and you go into situations really nervous about talking with people, maybe you have some insecurities, maybe you have body image issues, like whatever it may be, it could be really hard to connect with people and start conversations at a party, at a social event. And so the drinking is a good way to unwind that a bit. And, oh, I feel more confident when I'm drinking. Or I feel like I can talk to people more easily, because what it does is it loosens that judgment. Another way that alcohol sneaks up on people is to alleviate pain or discomfort. Many people are struggling with physical pain or illness or something like that. Or emotional pain. Maybe you've been through some difficult times. Maybe you're going through a breakup. Maybe you're experiencing loss, grief or loss of some sort. And so that pain, physical, emotional, psychological, mental, whatever we want to call it, that pain, alcohol is a painkiller. I mean, there's even a drink called the painkiller, isn't there? It's a well-known cocktail that people will have. So alcohol does tend to numb pain for a period of time. But again, the aftermath of that is after the alcohol's out of your system, the pain comes back. Sometimes it comes back even worse because now you've got a hangover on top of it. The other thing I see with alcohol is people use it to celebrate, right? Alcohol is always there to celebrate a special occasion, a wedding, a graduation, an accomplishment, a promotion, winning something, whatever that may be. Let's have a glass of champagne for that, right? Let's celebrate. And so I think people come to believe, we're conditioned pretty early on here to believe that alcohol is part of celebration. It's a way to have fun. Here we are, it's the weekend, time to have a good time, get together with our friends, go out and do things. And alcohol has just made its way into all of those activities. And it's so rampant in our culture, right? You go to a sporting event, there's alcohol. You go to a party, there's alcohol. The first thing they ask you in a restaurant, would you like a drink? And so it's hard when it's always coming at you all the time. It's hard to sometimes say no, and it's hard to say no if other people around you are doing it. Even if you don't feel like having a drink, if someone offers you one, you don't want to be rude. You see everyone else doing it, you're like, okay, sure, I'll have a drink. And once people have that first drink, oftentimes it becomes very difficult to say no to a second or a third. Many people can do it, and that's wonderful. But I think a lot of us do struggle around once having that first drink and getting it in your system. It's very easy to want to keep the momentum going. Like, oh, let's have a round of shots, if you're with a group of people out, let's say at a bar or event. Or, well, we opened a whole bottle of this, so we might as well drink another glass of wine or whatever it may be. So it is very sneaky. And I think people sometimes, they don't want to admit that, oh, maybe alcohol plays a bigger role in my life than I would like. I mean, there's certainly guidelines out there around what is considered a problem, problematic drinking, right? That information is out there. For women, I believe it's, light drinking is considered 3 or less drinks a week. Moderate drinking gets you into 4 to 6, I believe. Anything more than 6 is considered heavy drinking. Men have different ratios. Alcohol does affect men and women differently. Women actually, what we've seen is more women, or the rates of addiction are actually going up for women higher than they are for men right now. In fact, women are starting to exceed men with some drugs and alcohol with the frequency and intensity of their use. Women tend to have more health consequences that come from alcohol use. I mean, there's a lot of things to be concerned about. I find it interesting that I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, where there are many highly educated, intelligent people. And yet, Marin County, one of our most affluent counties here in the Bay Area, has the highest rate of alcohol use for women who are pregnant, which I find interesting, right? How is it that women who are highly intelligent and educated, who know that drinking in your pregnancy probably not very good for the baby, especially in early pregnancy, and yet many women are drinking during their pregnancies? They can't give up that glass of wine. So, I think it behooves us in this day and age where more and more people are seeking consciousness, more people are interested in wellness and their own health, physical and psychological health. It kind of behooves us to look at this issue and be honest with ourselves. Like, might I have a problem with drugs or alcohol, right? And there are lots of quizzes out there that you can take to do that. And in fact, what I'll do after this live is I'll dig up some of those for you and put them in the links there. There's one screener called the CAGE, CAGE. There's another one called Audit, AUDIT, Alcohol Use Disorder Identification Test, I believe is what it stands for. These are just screening instruments that we use in our field. They're out there, for the public as well. I'm pretty sure AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, might have a little quiz of some sort on their website as well. But I would invite you to consider this. What is the role that alcohol is playing in your life? Doesn't have to be a negative one. I mean, there may not be anything wrong with having a drink or two a day, but it's going to be different for each person, right? 2 drinks for a small petite woman who has a low tolerance could actually get her a DUI or other consequences. For someone else, drinking a couple of drinks may not even affect them at all. So we all have a different relationship with alcohol. I would invite you to really take a look at that and see in what ways is alcohol perhaps serving as a brilliant strategy in your life. And do you have a healthy relationship with it? Does it have more power over you than maybe you would like to admit? And if so, is there something you might want to do about that? Would you like to maybe cut back? There's a lot of people who will do like a sober January, right? And they'll take breaks periodically from alcohol. Might be an interesting experiment. I've often suggested that for clients. Like, they might say, I'm not sure if I have a problem with alcohol. I said, well, what if you were to take a break from it and see what that's like? What if you go a week without alcohol? Notice what comes up for you. What happens if you go 2 weeks or longer without alcohol? Can you do it? Oftentimes it's realizing, wow, like I actually couldn't stay sober for that period of time. What does that mean for me? What is that telling me about myself? And is there something I might want to change there? And if that's true, if there is a change you'd like to make with alcohol, I would suggest reaching out for support. There are many people, there's a whole movement called Sober Curious, right? Google it. Sober Curious is out there more and more, especially in these major cities in America and around the world. I know New York is really taken to this. I believe San Francisco, we're starting to get some of this, is alcohol-free bars where they serve mocktails and people can go and socialize and get all of that, music and whatever they get from going out to a bar, but without the alcohol. It's a growing movement. More and more young people of our Generation Z kids, that are young adults now, they're starting to, have less of, many of them, not all, many of them are starting to be less interested in alcohol or drugs, and they're more wanting to have sober activities. So harm reduction is another perspective, right? It isn't all black or white. It's either like I drink a lot or I don't drink at all. There's the concept of harm reduction, which is I'm reducing my substance use to have less harm, right? Instead of drinking 3, 4, or 5 drinks in an evening, I choose to stop at 1 or 2. Or I know a lot of people will cut back on hard liquor, for example, like no more shots at the bar, no more drinking mixed drinks because those create more problems for me. I tend to drink more when I do that, or I drink more than I intended, or maybe I have blackouts, or whatever it may be. So harm reduction is the idea that we're going to engage in less of the potentially dangerous behavior. So there are many, many ways. There's tons, obviously, of books and resources out there. There are groups, self-help groups like AA, and other groups that are more focused on harm reduction. We at Firebird Healing are specialists. Myself and my therapists all have worked with addiction and mental health issues for a very long time. We have people who are also in recovery themselves, who have been through drug and alcohol addiction and have recovered. So we have a lot of wisdom. We have a lot of experience. We offer a free 30-minute consultation for folks who might be interested in availing themselves of our services. We have support groups for people for loved ones who deal with someone who has an addiction issue. We have trauma support groups. We've got a lot of stuff going on at Firebird. So definitely check us out, firebird-healing.com. And I would love to hear some comments. If you're watching this now or in the future, please do share about your own experiences or what you see going on in the world. I think we're in a hard time right now, post-pandemic. There's people who got really hooked on drugs and alcohol during the pandemic and have had a hard time stepping away from it. I see rates of addiction are up, certainly overdoses and deaths from drugs and alcohol are up at rates higher than we've ever had before. I mean, it is a real epidemic right now. And, if you find that alcohol is playing a less than desirable role in your life, please do reach out. Please do be willing to have that conversation. And if there's any way in which I or my team can support you, please let us know. Hope you've enjoyed this chat, and I'll see you again next time.